I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
He wants to show that he can dominate on every platform.
Amazon, chocolate, Elaine, what can he do?
Listen, I am guilty of buying a Mr. Feastables bar from Target at the behest of my children.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Sean McNulty of the Wake Up Newsletter here in New Jersey on Thursday, March 20th. Joining me from Los Angeles is Elaine Lowe, but Richard Rushfield slacked me, Elaine, saying it's March Madness. I have no time for you people. So, he's out today, Elaine.
Yeah, Richard thinks March Madness is what happens when you watch too many movies in a row.
Yeah, his March Madness is definitely not the March Madness that everybody else is thinking of right now. Very curious what he would do with that idea, actually. But now he has an event he needed to be at today, so he sends his regards to all. But to fill the void of Richard as best we can, we're going to be joined by Natalie Jarvie in just a little bit, talking all things about the big YouTube creators who are dipping their toes in the world of big streamers. But before we get to that, Elaine, it's Thursday, recording here on Thursday. Nothing quite like losing a cool $1 billion on streaming. As the information came out today, who cited two people with direct knowledge of the matter. It's a direct quote, putting Apple's annual loss on Apple TV Plus at the 1 billion mark, loss in a year there, Elaine. So, we've seen worse. Is that the optimistic spin?
Look, it's in a way not unusual, right? Like every streamer went through a period of loss. Peacock is still losing money.
Peacock's
and it's got
1.8 billion last year.
1.8 billion,
exactly.
right? It's got fewer subscribers than Apple. It's got 36 mil. Apple has reported, like 45 million
45,
subs.
we think globally, but it wasn't quite specified, but 45 million, yeah.
But I think there's a certain level of potentially schadenfreude around hearing these numbers around Apple. I don't know. That's what I'm guessing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just, Apple had $36 billion in net profit in Q4 alone. Like, this is a company that is used to printing money, and to have a business that is definitely not doing that, no, it's 2025. We're a few years into this, Elaine, and as I said, HBO or Max is turning a profit. Disney's turned a profit. Even Paramount's losses last year were down to a mere $500 million.
Yeah, everybody else is crossing the finish line a little earlier, and they're kind of like, well, Apple,
how about you?
Yeah, like you said, used to printing money. The thing about Apple TV Plus, right, is that when did it launch? 19?
Yeah, 18, 19, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Five plus years on.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the way people in the industry still talk about it, it's like, yes, they have respected executives who work there. They release shows and movies that do well. You look at Ted Lasso and Severance, but people still refer to Apple TV Plus essentially as a line item, right? Like, it's hard to see Apple TV Plus outside of the context of its giant parent company. I was talking to the head of a production company yesterday who does business with them and called them hobbyists in the space,
This is yesterday?
Yeah, this is just yesterday. I think that says something, right? And they're well known, right? Like, as buyers, like, they spend big when they want something. They attach A-list talent. Like, they are serious business when they want to be.
Yeah.
And you tell me if you feel differently, but like, I feel like there's kind of the sense that, like, at any time, if they just want to shut down the whole operation, pack up their ball and go home, it wouldn't hurt the parent company a bit. And it still seems kind of plausible even this many years into their existence down in Culver City.
Yeah, and I will say in the piece of the information, there was a commitment from executives. There was no sense of, and they may be leaving kind of thing. Also, Elaine, just to further the sentiment, it's not just us or the business. There was a story on Ted Sarandos in Variety this week, and he was asked about Apple. His quote was, "I don't understand it beyond a marketing play, but they're really smart people. Maybe they see something we don't." So even Ted Sarandos is not quite sure what Apple intentions are here.
Little shade.
Little shade there, perhaps, from good old Ted. But still saying, like, I really couldn't give you the raison d'etre. Companies without a reason for being, yes, it's like at some point they just can leave. So, there is that factor. But Elaine, it is important, to note. I said they're still spending a lot of money, as you mentioned. Obviously, F1, a $300 million movie, they're still writing the big checks, maybe a little bit less. The information reported they were trying to trim the budget by about 500 mil there to down to 4.5 billion for an annual content spend for sports, movies, and TV. I said content, Richard. I know. Don't yell at me, but I'm throwing sports in there.
Use the C word, Sean. Weren't we just warned about this a week or two ago?
I put sports in there too, so just for the record. But they have no IP, so they are investing in original ideas and making original films and movies. So for this player went away. That's not great for Hollywood and talent, all the things we talk about, right? I mean, so let's remember that, I think, in this conversation, too.
But it's in this bucket, right? I think it's specifically Apple and Amazon that are still in this bucket of like, this is a smaller division within an enormous Silicon Valley giant, or I guess Seattle giant in the case of Amazon. And it's like, at any point in time, like it could just be a write-off and they would be fine without it. I doubt that either player is going away anytime soon, but I feel like that adds a certain level of, I don't know if it's reservation or just
unsettled, but that's that feeling that we kind of have
a little
right now.
Unsettled of like, to continue doing business with a player that could, in theory, if they wanted to, go away, even though again we haven't seen any signs of that at all.
And it was not in the piece either, but and Amazon does have, look, they have an NFL contract, they have an NBA contract, they're not going, they have a little more deeper ties to the so they're a little less concerned in that regard, and have been having a lot of other success, more than Apple has had in this regard too. They have MGM as a studio, they've bought a studio, so Apple's done none of these things. Of course, Richard had his take in this Jamboree column on Thursday, and yes, Elaine, he did mention buying Disney. So just for the record,
of course, no mention of Apple in the industry could be complete. I'm still skeptical, but why do I feel like I'm going to owe Richard $10 in a bet like 5 years from now,
exactly.
right?
We all just feel that way, yeah. I know, we're all like, no way, but like, get that $10 handy, Elaine. Like, basically, you can check his thoughts there at theankler.com. So we will see what transpires there going forward. But let's bring in our featured guest today. We're joined by Natalie Jarvie, who is the author of the Like and Subscribe newsletter. Natalie, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to see you. And if Natalie's here, it means we're very likely talking about YouTube, which has had a lot of moments in Hollywood over the years, kind of ducking in about, some kind of more short-lived than others, perhaps. Some have stuck, some have not. We thank you for the Cobra Kai. Nice donation there to the Hollywood ecosystem. But in terms of YouTube creators, Natalie, something you looked at in your piece this week, their profile seems to be higher than ever, I feel like, in pop culture at large. And maybe that's exaggeration of sort, but I feel like we're talking, even in Hollywood, about these creators more than we probably have to date. And we're seeing some more creators kind of expand into, quote, Hollywood again, maybe in different ways than the past. This isn't just a D'Amelio reality show on Hulu kind of thing. So where are we at here in this moment of time in your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, as long as Hollywood has been interested in creators, they have been interested in figuring out how to port creators and their massive audiences to film and TV. And this goes all the way back to when the agencies first started signing a bunch of creators, a decade and a half ago, maybe even longer in some cases. The challenge is that early on, YouTube was kind of seen as the starting point and Hollywood was the end goal. And the truth is that most of these creators were not actors. Maybe some were musicians, a few were singers, but many of them, what they were best at was being themselves on the internet and, showing off their lives to their fans and their followers. And a lot of early examples of those shows just didn't really go anywhere. My personal favorite, when I was at The Hollywood Reporter, Netflix did a show with a guy named Cameron Dallas. He was known as a big Viner.
Oh, Viner, Elaine. Oh, look at that.
Yeah. Reference a decade
Elaine
ago.
loves a good Vine talk. Yeah, exactly. All right. But what was this? I'm not remembering. What was this exactly?
It was a reality show about his life, and it was called Chasing Cameron. I did a big interview with him for The Hollywood Reporter. I think we had him eating In-N-Out or something, without a shirt on. And, that show just didn't go anywhere. And to be honest, I haven't heard much about Cameron Dallas in the last few years
where
either.
is he now?
Where is he now? Yeah.
So, those things just didn't work. And I think there were enough examples of that everyone kind of took a break. Hollywood took a break, creators took a break. And for the last several years, creators have been off doing their own thing and really figuring out how to survive without Hollywood. They have huge audiences. They're making millions of dollars. They have complete creative control over what they do. They don't have to worry about a studio note, nothing like that. And now all of a sudden, for the reasons that you guys talk about on this podcast all the time, Hollywood is suddenly going, wait a minute. We need creators. We need cheaper content, and we need people who have built-in audiences.
Right. IP, right? Yeah, exactly.
IP, but also just proven success and proven, kind of charisma. And so now all of a sudden Hollywood is coming to creators and saying, hey, you want to do a show with us? creators don't need them.
Exactly.
And I think we will see some shows. We've seen some shows, and there are very specific reasons why a creator might now do a deal in Hollywood. But I think you're going to have a lot of examples of creators being courted by Hollywood and deciding it's not worth it to them to essentially try to move their audience from YouTube or TikTok or Instagram over to a Netflix or an Amazon or a whatever platform.
What is the reason to even go a traditional TV route anymore? I mean, you think about it, right? If you already have a massive audience of 1 million or 2 or however much, and it's a direct relationship and you can monetize that relationship directly. I mean, is it about the prestige? Is it about a certain level of legitimacy? Or do they feel like they don't even need that kind of historic legacy tradition,
does it help
legitimacy?
advertising in that sense of, hey, I'm on Amazon, is that a halo? That was my older thought. I had the same thought, Elaine, but I'm like, what is that impetus, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I think every creator is going to have their reason, right? And it's going to be different for everyone. But sure, the prestige is huge. It's still Hollywood. It's still, a Netflix show or a Disney movie or whatever it might be, right? And that means something. Creators are talent at the end of the day, and everyone has got a little bit of vanity. And if there's the potential of winning an Emmy, maybe, or something like that, you might want to try for something like that. I think the money too can't hurt. Now this is a lot smaller money than they can make on YouTube, but if the right check was put in front of them, it would be hard to say no. I do think Hollywood's going to have to pay a real premium though for this kind of talent.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of paychecks, MrBeast got a pretty nice paycheck from Amazon, 100 mil.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, MrBeast is really interesting. And, I don't know Jimmy personally, but my sense is that he wants to show that he can dominate on every platform. I mean, that's what his whole campaign to be the biggest YouTuber was all about. And so Amazon made the right deal with him. And, he wanted to be able to prove that he could do it. And I think he did.
Yeah. Amazon chocolate, Elaine, what can he do?
Listen, I am guilty of buying a Mr. Feastables bar from Target at the behest of my children.
Oh, wow. It works. We wouldn't making money if it didn't work, right, Elaine? Although reportedly not making money from this $100 million Amazon check.
It's making money from the chocolate I'm buying at Target.
Exactly, right, yeah. So he's now asking, the Journal had a report this week that he's asking for $150 million for another season, Natalie. So even, again, it's nice to have the exposure, but he's not getting into Amazon to lose money, in this transition. So even for people like that, that's that bottom line. And he's learning the ropes here. Producing for Amazon is way different than producing, for YouTube, which has been well documented, I think, out there, Natalie.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's been well documented that he had some challenges getting Beast Games season 1 off the ground. And I mean, it sounds like Amazon wants to do more. Of course they do. It was a huge show for them.
Seemingly a hit, right? I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
It's always hard to know with these streamers how much you can trust the data. But what they've said is that it drew 50 million viewers in its first, month-ish on the platform, which is pretty sizable. And they also said that it's the second largest new show of 2024 behind Fallout. So even if you don't believe the 50 million number, at least the scale.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, it's notable, this Wall Street Journal article that came out last week, MrBeast made about $75 million for season 1, and now he's coming back and he's asking for a lot more because, again,
success,
and you got to pay a premium for these creators. And MrBeast, his whole thing is that he's always trying to go bigger and better and crazier.
Right. Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, what's wild to me is that when I was talking to folks about this, I have on good authority that part of his ask for season 1 was to not have any studio notes, which, I mean, I'm sure any showrunner is just balking at right now, the idea
final cut, Elaine.
He gets final cut.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't have to get any studio notes.
He's the Christopher Nolan of YouTubers here. Yeah, right.
I mean, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
They don't know how to take notes. They're not used to
or
it,
that.
They just, they don't, they're so used to putting something up on the internet and for the
fast turn, too, right?
Fast turn, but also for the most part, the echo chamber that they exist within, it's one of positive reinforcement. Unless you really screw up as a creator, your fans mostly just love what you do. And they're going to tell you that no matter what. And so it's hard for creators to take a step back and be open to feedback and constructive criticism.
Yeah, I got to wonder if there was ever any friction there.
Well, I would point out that there were some pretty well documented challenges in the first season of the show. And you have to ask, whose fault was that? I don't know that I have a clear answer to that, but I do think that that is interesting. And that's something that, any other studio, any other network that wants to get into business with creators is going to need to think about, is pairing them with the right partners to help them through some of those, kind of growing pains.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's move to beasts of a different nature. The Paul brothers, who some of you also looked at this week, who are coming to Max next week with their Paul American series. It's no Wall Street. I'm just saying, look, I points for the title, but the Mark Wahlberg series, Wall Street, still takes it for me in Max titles for reality shows. So, Natalie, should we be surprised that we're seeing the Paul brothers come to the WBD on Max?
I don't think we should be surprised at all. I think in this post-election climate, everyone in Hollywood is trying to figure out their way into telling the story of the, quote, manosphere. And the Paul brothers are a great way into that world. They live these big, crazy, outrageous lives. They are already so used to being on camera. And, I get the sense that they kind of want to be understood. This show,
yeah?
I found it fascinating by how much it showed them as partners. In the case of Logan, a soon-to-be parent, it showed how they have this very interesting relationship with their parents. And, I got the sense that, yes, they like to live these big, crazy lives, but they also want people to understand who they are as humans, too.
You could also say they want to be positioned in a certain way. It could be the way you could also spin it in that direction. But they have no, lacking of opportunity to express who they are as people or what they believe in and to their audience or to America. But on Max, it's like myself, I'm not that familiar with them. I may be more of a Max viewer than a YouTube streamer. So again, it may be a different audience there, Natalie, who were familiar but not that familiar to kind of know something about them, perhaps?
Yeah, I wonder what the entry point is for somebody. I'm only sort of familiar with the Paul brothers in that by osmosis, it has been information about them has been forced on me, right? Or in the case of the Tyson fight, or as one person I talked to called it elder abuse on Netflix. But what are we going to get? And what's the kind of the appeal to somebody who has a Max subscription?
Well, this is so interesting, right? And I interviewed the executive producer on the show, Andrew Freed, who produced the show via his Boardwalk Pictures. And I asked him that very question. What was your own familiarity with the Pauls? And, he said that he hopes that the show will kind of meet people wherever they are. So if you're someone who has had the Pauls thrust upon you, Elaine, they will give you the recap. They will tell you, kind of why you need to know who they are and, what are the basics. Jake Paul was on Disney Channel's Bizaardvark. He got fired from that show after he was having really crazy parties at his home.
It doesn't vibe with the Disney Channel ethos.
Meanwhile, his brother Logan became, kind of, I think, even more well-known after he took a trip to Japan and went to the famed so-called suicide forest and then actually discovered a dead body and showed it on camera. And he faced a huge backlash for that. So for a lot of people, those might be the things you know about them, or you might know that, Jake Paul fought Mike Tyson, or you might know that they interviewed Donald Trump on one of their podcasts. You may have some point of reference, and then the show will build out from there. Or you might be a huge fan and watch all their videos and listen to their podcast every week. And so what's in it for you? Well, you are getting what's happening, on the other side of the camera, more or less.
What do you think the template for success is for a show like this? Because I think of other really popular creators whose shows haven't translated to a broader audience, like the D'Amelios on Hulu or shows like Hype House on Netflix, things like that.
I think a lot of it has to do with how vulnerable are you willing to get? How much are you willing to really show what life is like behind the scenes? And also, are you interesting when, you're not performing for the camera?
Fair question, yeah.
I will say there was a really interesting moment in one of the episodes where Jake's girlfriend, Yuta, they're on a plane together and he's kind of, I don't know, talking up a big game. And she's like, you're being the character, Jake Paul. Stop being the character and be my Jake. Be the person that I know. And I thought that was so interesting because, even though they're giving us something that is a version of them, it's still kind of a character that they're putting on for the cameras.
That reminds me of the Beckham documentary of David's Victoria, tell the truth. When he peeked his head in, it was you can have those moments, Natalie, where it is don't be Victoria Beck, don't be Posh Spice. You can check out Natalie's full interview with Andrew Freed of Boardwalk Pictures over there at theankler.com. When we get back, we will discuss A24's upcoming scripted series, which is run by another content creator, and look at the final arrival of Snow White at the box office. We'll be back in a moment.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hi, I'm Ashley Collins, and I write the Dealmakers newsletter for The Ankler. Dealmakers guides readers through the intricate workings of lawyers, agents, and bankers, with insights exclusive to The Ankler covering the fast-changing state of deals, film finance, M&A, and the new frontier of AI law. I also interview some of the biggest names behind the industry's headlines, the people moving the entertainment industry forward, one DocuSign at a time. Dealmakers comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler. So please join me by subscribing today at theankler.com.
Welcome back to the Ankler Podcast. We are here talking all things YouTube creators making new moves into, quote, traditional Hollywood in the film and TV business. We have Benito Skinner, who may be a lesser-known name to the average Ankler listener, certainly to me, Natalie, but what do we need to know here? What is he up to?
Yeah, Benito is a smaller creator. He became really popular on TikTok for doing celebrity impressions and kind of creating these really funny characters. And he ended up developing a show with A24 that's going to premiere soon on Amazon. He plays a football player who is a closeted gay man, and he's going to come out. And I think this is a really interesting example of a creator doing something entirely different than what MrBeast or the Paul brothers are doing. You know, someone who a decade, 2 decades ago probably would have come up through a more traditional Hollywood path, but instead saw opportunity to develop characters and build an audience on TikTok first, and then try to parlay his success there into something resembling a more kind of traditional, scripted show.
Yeah, in fact, I kind of know what your talent is, Natalie, as you mentioned. Is your personality? Is it a creative? Like, it's not just like a one-lane YouTuber to other platform road there, and that's an example, that it's like, no, this is what he does, and maybe this format, we'll find out if it works, of course. Welcome to the streaming business, but definitely an interesting development. And then I'm going to mention here, of course, Ms. Rachel, one of my personal favorites. Is that a kid creator? What genre is Ms. Rachel in, Natalie? Officially, what do we call Ms. Rachel?
That's for the preschool set, right?
Preschool programming. Yeah.
Preschool programming? Okay. I'll let your kids are probably too old for Ms. Rachel at this point, Elaine, I would guess.
Ms. Rachel was a little after our time. Yeah. Although I did check out Ms. Rachel before this conversation to be like, oh, why have I not encountered her before?
I think your kid's probably a little bit older, I would guess.
Yeah. But she's very, very like preschool teacher vibes here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. But she's a huge YouTube creator and someone I've been fascinated by, not because my ABCs needed to brush up, but someone Netflix chose to make a deal with here, creating 4 episodes for Netflix out of existing YouTube content and not exclusive. This is basically taking YouTube episodes, which she's done, stitch them together, edit them together into 4 episodes and put them on YouTube. And it's been in the top 10 global English language TV list pretty much every week since it came on in late January. I mean, this is quite a story, I think, from a business point of view. Natalie, what's your take here?
Yeah, I think we'll look back on this deal as one that could be a real signal of how creators can work with Hollywood and Hollywood can work with creators going forward, because she was able to reserve all of her YouTube exclusivity. You didn't have to take anything off of that platform, but, they did something smart where they packaged together videos that had, kind of similar themes and topics. And, now they can live in a slightly different format on Netflix, a longer form than, what you find on YouTube. And the potential there for her is to reach an audience, like you, Elaine, who maybe missed her on YouTube and, now can find her there. I mean, the Netflix Kids app is remarkable in how it serves up content. I see that firsthand with my own toddler. And, she's right there alongside Cocomelon, another YouTube first property.
Yeah.
And alongside, a Hot Wheels show, at least in my family, and, other very well-known kids IP. And so it feels like, a no-brainer deal for her and a real sign of what other creators could look to try to do if they, want to think about the life cycle of their content, because most YouTube content makes its money in pretty short period of time after it comes out. There's not a long tail for making money on your YouTube content. And the more creators can think about ways to window their content, license their content, the better they can kind of set themselves up for long-term success.
Yeah, this is almost like that traditional, it's almost like a syndication. It is a syndication deal, and that's just, but going from YouTube to Netflix and not, a network to, a cable TV network, but it's all this dirt in Hollywood, but it's paying off. And that's the thing. It's really exciting to see.
By the way, also really cementing Netflix as babysitter is the winner in the streaming wars here.
It is cable. Like you have 80 million plus, people in America and Canada. This is their TV, so to see this take off that way, you just put it on there, as you said, put on the kids section, Natalie, and boom, it's right there.
It does feel like a huge missed opportunity for Disney Channel, for Nick
Good
Jr.
Point. Yeah.
They could all have been working with some of these, kids creators a lot earlier.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah. But seeing the success, Natalie, it's like, all right, maybe they'll be more open to these kinds of things going forward. So something to keep an eye on there. But let's finish up here today with something that's probably about as far away from the creator economy as we can get, an update of a film from 1937. So, of course, I'm talking about Snow White with a budget that definitely is not creator-friendly, Natalie, at $250 to $270 million from the folks at Disney Corp hitting theaters today. Any interest in either households here? I'll speak to you. Both have young people and kids in the house. Yay, nay, Elaine?
My children are actually fairly uneducated on the classic Disney princesses.
Oh, are they? Okay.
I was thinking about this just yesterday, actually, of like how when we were growing up, we all sort of had like a very common like knowledge set, right? Of like, the Disney princesses. These are the standard nursery rhymes. Like these are the Grimm fairy tales. Like everybody
Rachel.
sort of had the same set of knowledge. Yeah, now it's like, these kids are into Miss Rachel and like those kids are into Minecraft. And it's so fragmented that I was like, do my kids even know the story of Snow White?
Who's this Snow White character you keep talking about, Mom?
Right. I don't know, Natalie, what about you?
My son was seeing billboards for Mufasa for like months. And every time he would see them, he'd be like, Mom, there's a new Lion King movie. And he would get so excited.
Wow.
And he has not seen a single thing about Snow White. So yeah, same. I don't think he has any awareness of it. Even if we had seen it, I'm not sure it would resonate with him in quite the same way. Listen, we are a Disney Plus family. So we will almost certainly check it out when it comes to streaming.
All right. Well, that's funny. The premiere was last weekend. Richard was there, of course, and the reviews are coming out, and it's kind of like, it's pretty good. Like everybody hit the back. I mean, there's so much baggage, and I don't know that how much this resonates in the American public. And Richard had a great column. I recommend go checking that out at theankler.com there, Elaine. But what's your takeaway on this in terms of the larger, I don't know, blowback or
with the backlash around the stars?
I guess, and the conversations and I don't know.
I will say the luxury of covering TV and not the film side of things is I kind of get to experience this part of things as a consumer, like as your average American viewer. And I'm just like, I see the headlines and I'm like, what's the controversy? And if it hasn't permeated through, it's just, whoosh, it's going over my head. So I feel like in some ways, this is one of those conversations that takes place in a very particular industry bubble that I don't know that the rest of the American public is having.
Yeah. Natalie, any thoughts on your end?
I mean, exactly the same, Elaine. I had to read multiple articles to figure out.
I was like, what's the controversy? Why are people angry?
It's Snow White again. What's the problem? Yeah, right.
It just feels like a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. So we'll see what America thinks this weekend. But at least the quality seems to be there in the movies. So that's ultimately in the end. The movie has to stand on its own merit. That's what matters in the end. Anyway, we'll see how that all transpires. I'll, of course, cover all of that results on Sunday night in the Wake Up, which you get as part of your Ankler subscription. Just go to theankler.com to sign up. Pop up in the old email address. You can also reach us here at the podcast anytime at podcasts@theankler.com. Follow on the socials at The Ankler on your favorite social platforms. Elaine, always a pleasure. Richard, we missed you, of course. And thanks to Natalie Jarvie for joining us today as well. And a special thanks to you, as always, for listening. We'll see you next time.